Mum and Dad and Denny saw the passing out parade at Puckapunyal. It was a long march from cadets. The 6th Battalion was the next to turn. It was me who drew the card. We did Canungra, Shoalwater before we left. And Townsville lined the footpaths as we marched down to the quay. This clipping from the paper shows us young and strong and clean. And there's me in me slouch hat with me SLR and greens. God help me, I was only 19. From Buntow riding Chinooks to the dust at Newey Dad, I'd been in and out of choppers now for months. And we made our tents a home VB and pin-ups on the lockers, and an Asian orange sunset through the scrub. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And night time's just a jungle dark and a barking M16. And what's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19. A 4-week operation, when each step could mean your last one on 2 legs. It was a war within yourself, but you wouldn't let your mates down till they had you dusted off. So you closed your eyes and thought about something else. And then someone yelled out, "Contact!" and the bloke behind me swore. We hooked in there for hours, then it got almighty raw. And Frankie kicked a mine the day that mankind kicked the moon. God help me, he was going home in June. I can still see Frankie drinking tinnies in the Grand Hotel on a 36-hour rec leave in Buntow. And I can still hear Frankie lying screaming in the jungle till the morphine came and killed the bloody row. And the Anzac legends didn't mention mud and blood and tears, and the stories that my father told me never seemed quite real. I caught some pieces in my back that I didn't even feel. God help me, I was only 19. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And why the Channel 7 chopper chills me to my feet? And what's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19.
Welcome one and all to our friends who are here at Mackay Family Funerals in Gosford, and welcome to our friends who join us on the internet for the celebration of the life of Sergeant Colin John Harden. Our common bond of service to Australia brings us here. The bond between we who served, conscript and volunteer. The call to arms was answered and fulfilled in many ways. Survey Corps produced the maps for development and the phrase. Colin came to survey from the battalion of the Pig. His 7-Ra M60 was as mean as it was big. Detachment Survey Regiment, Bongilla, near the Hume Dam Wall, in a hall of rippled iron, set the standard to meet the call. That hall was our shelter, where we got it all together. The place where we all bonded, our enemy, the weather. Who was Colin Harden? Yes, one might well ask. A man of many parts was he, who seldom wore a mask to hide away just how he felt or appraised a situation. A rugby field enforcer and defender of our nation. Many of us who are here today or watching on the net refer to him as CJ. What you see is what you get. Colin's good mate, a Nasho, who Colin dubbed as Snoops, a brother Novocastrian, he could put CJ through the hoops. That skinny Nasho soldier and our brawny senior one swapped derogatory innuendos. Other diggers joined the fun. That same, not so skinny digger now has his chance to say what he really thought of CJ on Colin's Life Celebration Day. Over to you, Snoops.
Before I read an outline of Cole's life, I would like to express my feelings and also to identify the contributions by some other local people. I will mention some others later. I feel quite privileged to attend and perform this eulogy of my sometimes troubled yet humorous mate. Many local friends aren't even able to attend. The origin of the nickname Snoopy is still a mystery to me, but as we clicked from day one, I think it was a sign of affection. It remains my favourite one, despite the many less desirable later in civvy life. I called him several names in joking fashion, but I dare not repeat them. National service was not part of my life's desire or plan, but had I not served, I would not have met this quite unique character. I was able to completely ignore him when he called me a little shit or a silly little man, amongst many other, just for example's sake. Another nacho mate of Cole's was John Fryers, who due to COVID couldn't attend today from Mittagong. He also gave Cole great face-to-face support over recent years in Wyoming get-togethers with Bill Boyd and myself. He made a phone call out of the blue in early 17, which started the beginning of this Army get-together. His cousin Paul Harden of Cessnock also assisted him greatly with the move from Stroud to Hamilton in late 16, as Paul had a real estate contact. He also regularly assisted Cole with his family trees. Bill Boyd is able to be present as MC and deserves a lot of credit for his continued assistance helping Cole in his Wyoming days, which lasted for the past 3 years. He was always available when Cole needed help in any way possible. He says he doesn't begrudge it, as it is just something you do. Whilst Colin needed a lot of our support at times, he gave us lots of laughs. No doubt lots of you watching on live streaming due to COVID. No doubt lots of you are watching on live stream due to COVID. Unfortunately, I can't mention too many people in case I may miss some of his closest friends. Now I'll give you an outline of his life. I have delivered several eulogies in my time, but for me this is nearly the saddest for several reasons. Colin John Harden, or CJ, was born on Tuesday the 22nd of April 1947 in Cessnock District Hospital and was to be an only child. His parents were Robert and Margaret Walls Harden, who both served in World War II and were deeply affected by their war service, and they lived in West Cessnock near the showground. Due to family problems, he had to live with his mother and grandmother in Adamstown, a suburb of Newcastle. Subsequently, his primary schooling was at Adamstown Public School. In 1960, Cole attended Central Boys High School, Broadmeadow, and completed the 3-year intermediate certificate. Whilst at high school, he was selected in the New South Wales Combined High Schools Rugby League side to play Queens at the Old Lang Park in Brisbane. It was the curtain raiser to the interstate game between New South Wales and Queensland in 1966. long before it came to be known as the State of Origin. On the lighter side, there's a story about when he played with Western Suburbs Rugby League FC in Newcastle. He loved talking about his ability as a scrum prop, to protect his little mate Alan Dagwell. He said also that it wasn't beyond him to use any means possible to upset the opposition front row if need be, to protect his little mate and maybe cause a ruckus if he could. Whilst playing for Western Suburbs Newcastle, he was selected in an under-18 side for Newcastle to play in the country championship. After leaving school, he started a 4-year apprenticeship as a boilermaker welder at the BHP Newcastle. He attended Tyfield TAFE course, TAFE course, which he never completed. He joined the CMF in 1964 and due to family circumstances he enlisted in the Royal Australian Army in December 1966. Unfortunately, he landed himself in infantry as a machine gunner and fought in the 7th Battalion in South Vietnam in 1967. He was involved in a very traumatic and unfortunate incident in the jungles which involved the loss of a mate. He returned from active service overseas in April 1968. While serving in infantry, he was selected twice to play in the Army's inter-service rugby union side in 1968-69 against the Navy and the RAF, plus visiting New Zealand sides. On his return from Vietnam, his girlfriend Joan Meadows was in Sydney to greet him with his parents. They were later married in November 1969 and moved to take up residence in Albury on Boxing Day the same year, as he then had a new posting to the School of Military Survey, Bonegilla. Unfortunately, Cole had many problems in his life after that, with sometimes severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder as we know it today. In those days it wasn't quite so understood. In the first half of 1970, he completed a cartographic drafting course at the Bonegilla School of Military Survey and then transferred to the Royal Australian Survey Corps. Cole then moved down the road about July 1970 to join the Detachment Army Survey Regiment, where, in his words, were to be the best years of his life. Over the time he became a proficient cartographic mapping specialist. He attained his sergeant status in the Survey Corps, becoming a section leader in 1974. He was also a talented cricketer and played with East Albury Cricket Club with myself, and also the Bandiana Army side in 70-71. In 72 he was selected to play inter-service cricket for Southern Command in Melbourne. Colin and Joan were blessed with 2 children, in Karen in 1974 in Albury and then Christopher in 1981. In the late 90s, his daughter Karen gave Cole 2 grandchildren, Shannon in 1995 and Laura in 1998. It's good to see them here today. He remained at the Detachment Army Survey Regiment until his discharge in 1976, and then moved to Queanbeyan, New South Wales, to work for the Department of National Mapping in Canberra. In 1980, he left the service and took up a position with GeoPico in their Darwin branch and worked in the position of senior draftsman. He then moved back south to work in the main Sydney office at Gordon. Cole commuted from Wyoming to Sydney every day with Bill Boyd, who was the chief draftsman. Sadly, after the loss of his father in 1983, life started going a bit pear-shaped for Cole, and changed jobs again to work as chief cartographer at the Uni of Newcastle. In 1990, he and Joan divorced. So to get away from Australia, he moved to Christchurch to work in a position as cartographic director with a mapping company. After several breakdowns in New Zealand, Cole returned to Australia to seek help and guidance, not understanding what was going on with his mental health. Since 1993 and living in Lambton, Cole was involved with the Newcastle Vietnam Veterans Organisation, helping other veterans with pensions. And after some 10 years of involvement, he finally gave it away as an executive position. He then concentrated on his hobby, which was building small-scale military models from the Second World War to the present. Cole then moved to Stroud about 2003 for peace and quiet, where he lived for around 9 years or so. He met Jasmine Zhu and they married in China in 2013. After a near fatal car accident in early 2016 and long hospitalisation, they moved to Hamilton, Newcastle, and then to Wyoming in early 19. It was in early 17, his life was enlightened when he started catching up with his former Bonegilla Army mates and started finding many more to start planning a reunion for after Anzac Day 2019. This gave him interest whilst in very poor health and maybe helped him through the massive heart operation he had in Sydney in December 19. In COVID in 2020, he telephoned many more of his ex-army mates that he'd located and maybe helped him through that difficult period. The planned 2020 reunion in Sydney fell through due to COVID, but he and mates successfully arranged a successful 3-day February 21 reunion in Albury Wodonga. Cole was instrumental in the planning and organisation of this reunion with Wodonga Army mates Al Staley, Russell Milton and their wives. Al actually hired an electric wheelchair and ferried it around for him. Russ, Laurel and Joy arranged all the catering while Tracy Phillips prepared all the name tags. This reunion was immense for him and it gave him a real lift in his mental health for a few months. In 2019, he enjoyed creating the banner you see here today, even though it was supposed to be half that width. And it would be returned to the Bandiana Museum for display. However, around April this year, due to incurable health problems, he was struggling and was forced to go into Gosford Hospital in June 2021. It is a miracle that he lasted so long, but thanks mainly to a team of ex-Army mates, John Fryers, Russell Milton, Al Staley, Tracy Phillips, Bill Boyd, myself and others, made his last 4 or so years as pleasurable as possible. Again, in his words, his army days and general life at Bonegilla were the best days of his life. Whilst mainly isolated due to his disability, assembled models, did his family tree, continued computer interests, and more recently miniature trains. On the lighter side, Cole had one of those personalities that made people laugh, even in his days of despair. He sometimes had a straightforward approach, but behind that tough facade was a caring and kind person. His ability to make a good story out of anything was a trait of his, despite there being a little bit of embellishment at times. He liked to tell the story that we call Fiddler on the Roof, which happened in Bonegilla. The late sapper Bob Fiddler was a real character and liked to cause a stir in a fun way. Anyway, one morning, maybe after a big night, he wouldn't get out of bed for love and the money. Bill tried his best, but he wouldn't budge. After Bill left the barracks, he came back to find Bob on the roof of the Litho building and refused to come down. It was somewhat of a relief that a new officer who thought he knew better took over from Bill and said, "Don't worry, Bill, I'll look after it." Well, he took a while to get him down. Also, another one of his stories was about another army mate who used to like eating goldfish whole out of the fish tanks in Albury Wodonga clubs. He said all you could see was the tail flapping and disappearing down the throat. Consequently, this fellow was banned from a few clubs. When Colin lived in Hamilton, he met some of us for coffee. My wife and myself will never forget that on a few occasions we saw him literally racing down the footpath, usually, sometimes the road, in what he called his little red caboose, with a little flag attached. You just see it, can't you? He called it his rabbit speed, and he could have wiped himself out. Going slow was not on his radar. Unfortunately, he sadly passed away, almost alone in COVID lockdown, but in peace on the 17th of August 2021 at 74-year-old. He was half an hour short of the 45th anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan, Vietnam, an event to which he had an affinity towards. You will always be remembered, mate, for your ability to make people laugh and rise above adversity. You did the best you could with the cards you were dealt. Finally, Cole, rest in peace, our dear friend.
I'd like to pass on my condolences to you as your family, to the mates that have been here today, and the mates that can't make it, and the family that can't make it. After listening to the history there of Bill's service and all that, what I have on my A4 sheet of paper from the government supplied is nothing compared to what's been said today. But in respect of Colin, I will go on now with the service of what been given to me by our Australian government exercises. Colin John Harden, service number 290195 and also 217204. Citizens military service from the 17th of August 1964 to the 11th of December 66. Australian Regular Army one day later, 12th of December 66 to 11th of December 75. Employment rifleman, machine gun number, topographic draftsman. Rank on discharge was Corporal Temporary Sergeant. His postings, one base workshop, 17th of August 64. Of course, we all do basic training. He then went to the Infantry Centre Reinforcement Wing, 1 Australian Reinforcement Unit in 67, 26 to September 67. 7 Battalion Royal Australian Regiment on 28th of October 67. Headquarters Eastern Command, January 69. School of Military Schooling, 2nd of January 1970. And the Army Headquarters Survey Regiment, 24th of June 1970. Operational service and deployment is Vietnam, 26th of September 67 to the 26th of April 1968. Honours and awards, the Australian Active Service Medals, 45, 75 with Class Vietnam. Vietnam Medal, Australian Defence Medal, Vietnamese Campaign Medal, Infantry Combat Badge, and of course the Return from Active Service Badge. Their bodies are buried in peace and their name liveth forevermore. O valiant hearts who to your glory came through dust of conflict and through battle flame. Tranquil you lie, your knightly virtues are proved, your memory hallowed in the land you loved. The hour has come for rest. This poppy, an emblem of sacrifice, the symbol of a life offered in the service of one's country, is a link between our comrade and us who remain. I place it here in remembrance. And at this time I would now invite his two best mates here. Would you accompany me, please? Ladies and gentlemen, if possible, would you please stand? Thank you for a moment's silence. Thank you. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them,
We will remember that.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated.
Thank you all for attending. It has been a privilege to be here, and for those who are watching from wherever, thank you for tuning in.
We met as soulmates on Paris Island. We left as inmates from an asylum, and we were sharp as knives, and we were so gung-ho to lay down our lives. We came in spastic like tameless horses. We left in plastic as numbered corpses, and we learned fast to travel light. Our arms were heavy, but our bellies were tight. We had no home front, we had no soft soap. They sent us Playboy, they gave us bad hope. We dug in deep and shot on sight, and prayed to Jesus Christ with all of our might. We had no cameras to shoot the landscape. We passed the hash pipe and played our door their childhood on every acre. And who was wrong? And who was right, 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 right? It didn't matter in the thick of the fights. We held the day in the palm of our hand. They ruled the night